Sure.
Connor McCormick Cavanaugh joins us now from Westward, and Connor spent one night in Denver's safe outdoor space. So let's talk about this. Where did you get the idea to even try something like this?
Well, my editor, Patricia Calhoun, she had the idea. She said, "Connor, do you wanna go spend the night at the safe outdoor space at one of them? Because there are two right now." And I immediately jumped on that opportunity because it was a great chance to do some immersive journalism and kind of get an idea for what folks are going to be experiencing every night, especially during the winter.
I mean, it's something we've talked about for a while now, something the city's been trying to figure out for a while. What was the experience like?
So yeah, I mean, it was a really invaluable experience. So I got there at 4:15. I met some of the staff there, hung out with them for a while, got my tent set up. So these are ice fishing tents. So they already had them set up, but I got all the stuff that I needed to sleep in there. And so there's a cot, which is raised off the ground. And then I had my sleeping bag, which I put on the cot. And then there's a heating pad that I put underneath the cot, and then a heating blanket on top. And so I went to bed around, I want to say 9. That's when I tucked in. And yeah, at first I was worried that I was going to be a bit cold because I could still see my breath. I was on my phone watching some Monday Night Football, and I could see from the light of my phone, oh God, that's my breath. I'm going to be cold. But then, so yeah, I could see my breath. But as I was going to bed, I kind of tucked myself into the heating blanket, almost forming a capsule, and I felt much warmer and much more comfortable. And it wasn't as though the heating blanket was giving me a kind of a roaring heat sensation, but it was definitely better than what I was feeling kind of if I was just walking around in the tent. And so, I mean, the only thing that was really cold as I was falling asleep were my feet, but that's kind of normal because I was walking around in the snow before. And yeah, as I was sleeping, after I fell asleep, I woke up a few times throughout the night and thought to myself, wow, I feel cold, only to realize that the heating blanket, I guess I had kicked it off. And so that happened periodically throughout the night, and then I would put it back on. But I never got to the point where I felt a bone chilling cold that I felt before when I've been camping, when the temperature dips low and you just can't sleep when camping. So overall, it was a fine experience. I wasn't particularly uncomfortable. And one thing that kept popping into my mind is, hey, this is much better than camping on the street because I don't have to worry about anyone preying upon me, trying to take my stuff, or potentially local authorities or the police saying, hey, you gotta take down your tent and move. So I mean, that gave me a peace of mind in that regard.
Obviously, you're not taking advantage of any of the services that would be offered at sites like this, but what was your takeaway from that? Because I know you got to spend some time there.
Yeah, so I mean, the staff there, they're people who have experience either working with people experiencing homelessness or they've been homeless themselves. And so they have kind of a great deal of empathy for people going through difficult situations. And so I wasn't accessing any services there, but I know that for residents who just moved in there the other day, they're going to have access to mental health care on site, medical care. They're going to have access to job placement. They're going to have access to housing placement opportunities. And it's all going to be centralized at the site. Oftentimes a big problem with accessing services is that, say you're a service provider and you're visiting an encampment, if that encampment gets swept, you don't know where that person went necessarily. So you may have been trying to follow up with them for job placement or mental health care, any type of service, and you can't find them. Whereas here, it's going to all be centralized. You're gonna have this rapport that's built between service providers and the residents there. And then just you have the big peace of mind as a resident there. You don't have to worry about being swept. And that's just huge for getting your basic needs met and kind of thinking, okay, let me go look for a job, or okay, let me try and get on some sort of housing list. you're not kind of, it's, it's Maslow's hierarchies of need. You're not at the basic level of need. You can kind of advance up and focus on some a bit more advanced parts of your life.
Does it surprise you that it took the city this long? Well, and it's not even the city, these are private organizations that are doing this, but that it took kind of Denver this long to get something like this?
Well, we got to remember. So Mayor Michael Hancock, he was mayor in 2012 when Denver City Council passed the urban camping ban. So Mayor Hancock and his cabinet, they kind of have a focus on, we don't want people camping on streets. We want to get them into shelters. And so that's, oftentimes the justification for dispersing encampments. And so when service providers first came up with this idea in April of, let's start setting up these safe camping sites, especially during COVID, because the CDC is recommending municipalities not disperse these encampments because they don't want the dispersals to further spread the COVID. So when they first had this idea back in April, Mayor Hancock was reluctant. He actually, I asked him during a press conference, what do you think about this? He said, there's no way we're doing this. And then slowly but surely, and I think because it's an emergency situation, the mayor started to come around. And finally, at the beginning of July, he said, okay, we can do this. We can set up 3 sites for up to 60 people each. And so then the first site was announced, Denver Coliseum parking lot. There had been an auxiliary men's shelter set up there for people experiencing homelessness inside the Coliseum. And so the idea was, okay, we'll use the parking lot for the first safe camping site. You could have a large one there. But then neighbors started being very vocal with their opposition. So we got to remember the Denver Coliseum is in kind of the GES, Globeville, Elyria, and Swansea neighborhood area. Historically marginalized, some would say mistreated by the city. And so there's this narrative among neighbors there, which is majority Latino, that they've been neglected by the city, and the city has placed services that would be unwanted elsewhere in the city or wouldn't fly elsewhere in the city in their neighborhood. So they had a big fight over the tiny home village being relocated there back in mid 2019. And so that narrative developed. And so then it was quickly pulled off the table. So there was waning political support. And then you had a suggestion for a safe camping site a few months later in 5 Points, in a small plaza in between a library there and Sonny Lawson Park. Now, this was going to be a tough sell because it's right along kind of a very busy area of 5 Points, and it was on a very small piece of land. And the local business improvement district folks there were vehemently opposed to it, even though there were people actually camping in an unsanctioned way on that piece of land. They said it's different when people are camping in an unsanctioned way there. It'd be if the city gave authority for them to do it, it would be who knows what would happen. Maybe then they would just keep placing sites in there. So that failed too. The mayor quickly backtracked on that. And then service providers were able to work with the city to kind of get some zoning authority so that they could set up these safe camping sites on private land, on church land. And so that's pretty much what they did. So whereas with the first 2 proposals, which were city-owned land, it was very much the service providers in the city saying, hey, neighbors, we want to do this. What are your thoughts? With these 2 other sites, which one is in Capitol Hill and one is in Uptown, it was very much from the service provider's perspective, hey, we're going to do this. Here's what it's going to be like, but it wasn't asking for permission. And that definitely angered some neighbors who were saying, you can't do this. You gotta ask us about this first. But that's really the kind of the up and down that service providers in the city have been on since April.
You experienced this. So I wonder, and through your reporting, I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but do you see having this there and having it operating changing the perspectives potentially of some of the people who are opposed to this in the neighborhoods? And does this almost kind of pave a path for this solution down the road?
Yeah, I think this could potentially be huge and kind of shifting the narrative of what people have about homelessness. So a lot of these unsanctioned encampments, they can be somewhat disruptive to a neighborhood. You can have disturbances, you can have fights, the trash accumulates, and human waste can accumulate. Some of those issues service providers say can be solved by the city providing bathrooms, the city providing trash pickup, that sort of thing. And that's kind of what is the safe camping site in a nutshell. It's kind of trying to ameliorate some of the not so good aspects of encampments that pop up on the streets, and making sure that they stay clean, they stay orderly, people have a place to go to the bathroom, there's going to be mobile showers. And I think neighbors will begin to come around to the idea of, hey, there are people camping outside. Some of them just, the shelters don't work for them for any different reason. There are a wide range of different reasons. And yeah, it makes sense to have a safe space where they can camp in peace. It I think some neighbors will view it as a win-win for the neighborhood and for the folks who are living outdoors. But again, there's also some people who really nothing will convince them on homelessness. They're kind of entrenched in their views.
I know that there are popular examples of this across the country, like Las Cruces.
Mm-hmm.
It started as an emergency situation, right? Almost the same scenario where they created this village and it was just going to be temporary. And then next thing you know, 10 years later, they've graduated people out of it. They've brought more people into it. Do you see this evolving like that?
So when I talk with service providers, when I talk with city officials who work on homelessness, there's a great optimism that if these two sites, and there's a third site that's already gotten approval. I don't actually know where it is yet. The city's not revealing that, but there's a third site that we're going to know about in a couple of weeks, that if these three sites work out and there are successful outcomes, that this could be the kind of a watershed moment where the city and service providers could set up these sites throughout the city. So they're not just in District 10 or District 9, which is where a lot of homelessness is kind of concentrated because it's near services. But they could also be, for example, in South Denver, along the border with Englewood, where there are a lot of folks who are camping out in tents, but they're in trailers also and RVs. And so the idea is to begin to start setting up these sites throughout the city so that they're equitably distributed. So you don't have certain residents of Denver saying, hey, why are we bearing the brunt of this issue? Why isn't everybody else sharing in it? And so there's definitely an optimism, and I think only time will tell. They're optimistic that it's going to work, and if it does, then I imagine it will spread.
What else am I forgetting with you, sir? Anything else that you witnessed through this experience that kind of spoke to you?
Yeah, I mean, just to highlight. So I've spent the past 2 days actually listening to the federal court hearing over Denver's homeless encampment sweeps, and one thing that keeps coming up is, city officials will say, oh, they had a 5-gallon bucket that they turned into a makeshift bathroom, or, oh, some infectious disease problems were exacerbated by the fact that they didn't have sanitation opportunities or laundry facilities. And I was thinking, yeah, but I almost feel like the city is making the case that service providers have argued for a long time is, why not provide those at encampments? Why not provide porta potties? Why not provide sinks? And when I had to wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom, and I could kind of tiptoe in the snow over to the porta potty, I mean, it's much better being able to go to the bathroom in a porta potty than just anywhere in an urban setting. And so that was something that definitely stood out.
Now you can read Connor's work at Westward's website. We'll put a link to it on the next Facebook page. Connor McCormick Cavanaugh, thank you for taking the time and chatting with me.
Thanks, Steve.